The west coast of Scotland, a land of storms, cliffs and shadows. Beneath the jagged rocks of Ayrshire, the sea breathes in and out of a cave so vast and so black that daylight barely touches its depths. To stand at its mouth is to feel the cold spray of the tide and to hear the echoes of something ancient. It was here, so the story goes, that a man named Alexander Sawney Bean carved out a life in the only way he knew, outside the reach of law, religion or morality. In that cave, he raised not just a family, but an entire clan, dozens strong, children, grandchildren, all born into darkness. For 25 years, they say, this clan hunted the lonely roads of Scotland. Travellers vanished, merchants never reached their markets, whole families disappeared without a trace. Bones washed up on the shore, stripped of flesh, and the people whispered of demons in the night. This is the legend of Sawney Bean, a tale of cannibalism, incest and mass murder. But it is also a tale of myth-making, of how a story can take root in fear and grow into something that outlives centuries. So tonight, we descend into that cave, into the hunger, the horror and the uncertainty, to ask, were the Beans Scotland's most terrifying family, or the invention of a darker kind of appetite? Who was Sawney Bean? The earliest accounts describe him as a man born in East Lothian during the reign of James VI. Some say his father was a ditch digger, others claim his family were tanners, but all agree on one thing: Sawney wanted nothing to do with honest work. He was described as lazy, brutish, quick to violence. In the folklore, he meets a woman just as vicious as he. She is nameless in many versions, remembered only as a woman wicked as himself. Together, they turn their backs on village life. And so, they travel west to the unwelcoming cliffs of Galloway. Here they find Benane Head, a yawning cave stretching more than 200 metres deep. At high tide, the sea conceals its entrance. At low tide, it offers shelter, secrecy and silence. In this darkness, Sawney and his wife begin their new life. They steal, they kill, they eat. Children are born, and grandchildren. The line bends in upon itself. Siblings with siblings, cousins with cousins, until the family tree becomes a knot of blood. According to the legend, the Bean clan eventually numbered around 45 to 50. They lived as a pack, hunting the roads, dragging victims back into the cave where the rocks were black with soot and the air stank of decay. But to understand why this story grips Scotland, we must also understand the times. The 16th century was an age of upheaval. Scotland was wrestling with religious conflict, the authority of the crown, and a reputation for lawlessness in the eyes of England. Stories of barbarism were easy to spread, and easy to believe. What was it like in Sawney Bean's cave? The accounts tell of a world hidden from the sun. By day the family remained silent for fear of being discovered. By night they emerged, hunting the roads like wolves. The spoils of their attacks, bodies, clothing, valuables, were dragged back into the cave. By torchlight the flesh was butchered. Some was salted and packed into barrels. Some was hung from hooks, limbs swaying above the black rock pools. The rest was cooked over fires that filled the cavern with a stench of meat and smoke. The children grew up in this environment. Their lullabies were screams, their toys were bones, and when they grew older, they joined in the killing. The clan multiplied, incestuous and insatiable. One can imagine the soundscape, waves booming against the rocks outside, mingled with the crackle of fire and the sawing of knives on bone. The cave became both womb and tomb, a world apart from Scotland, ruled only by Sawney's word and the appetite of the flesh. But such secrecy cannot last forever. For 25 years the killings continued. Travellers simply vanished. Merchants disappeared between towns. Whole groups of people were swallowed by the night. Bones, gnawed and broken, were sometimes discovered washed onto the beaches. Locals were terrified. They whispered of witches, of demons, of the devil himself haunting Ayrshire. Search parties were organised, innocent families accused, men hanged for crimes they never committed. Yet the disappearances went on. Chroniclers claim that the clan developed methods as organised as any army. They ambushed with precision, striking quickly, dragging bodies into the cliffs before a scream could echo. Some victims were butchered alive, others were hung upside down to bleed out before the feast began. The scale defies belief. Thousands, some say, died at their hands. And so Scotland lived with an invisible terror. No one dared travel at night. Even in daylight, roads grew deserted. Farmers refused to bring goods to market without armed escorts. And still, the cave remained unseen, the clan undefeated, until one night when the Beans chose the wrong victims. According to legend, the end came by chance. One evening, a man and his wife were returning from a fair when the Beans struck. The wife was dragged down, butchered before her husband's eyes. But before he could be killed, a group of riders appeared on the road. The husband survived, and the truth began to spread. King James VI himself, furious at the terror in his realm, assembled a force of 400 men and bloodhounds. They scoured Ayrshire, following the scent of death. At last, the dogs led them to Benane Head, to the cave. Inside, the soldiers found what nightmares are made of. Human remains strewn across the floor, barrels of salted flesh stacked high, limbs dangling from hooks. The air was thick with decay, and the clan themselves feral, blinking at the torches, their hands red with blood. Dragged into the daylight, the Beans were chained and taken to Edinburgh or Glasgow. Their crimes, it was said, were too monstrous for a trial. Justice would be immediate. The legend ends in fire and blood. The men of the clan were mutilated, their hands and feet hacked off, left to bleed to death. The women and children were burned alive before their eyes. No mercy, no forgiveness. Crowds, we are told, jeered and celebrated. The terror was over, the nightmare ended. Or so they believed. But was any of this real? Historians point out the story's problems. No contemporary record mentions Sawney Bean. The first printed accounts appear in the 1700s, 2 centuries later. Some argue it was English propaganda, painting Scots as barbarous and savage. Others see echoes of older European folk tales about wild men, forest cannibals, and the fear of the outsider. Could a clan of 50 people really survive undetected for 25 years, slaughtering thousands? Unlikely, but caves, lawless regions, and mysterious disappearances were real enough. Perhaps Sawney Bean was not a man, but a metaphor, for barbarism, for chaos, for the shadow side of Scotland's identity. And yet, the cave at Benane Head is real. Walk into it today and you'll hear the same roar of the tide, the same hollow echo. Perhaps that's enough to keep the legend alive. Sawney Bean, a man, a myth, a monster. Whether he lived or whether he was born of fear and hatred, his legend lingers in Scotland's soil. The cave still stands, tourists still whisper, and horror stories still borrow from the clan's dark feast. Perhaps Sawney never was real, but perhaps he doesn't need to be. Some stories endure not because they are true, but because they reveal the truths we fear most, that civilization is fragile, that darkness lives close to home, and that sometimes the monsters are us.